All right, so like Gina said, my name is Julie Travaglini, and I'm the Senior Director of Education and Curriculum at Allegheny Land Trust. I forgot to update my title on this slide here. Title change is relatively new, so I'm still getting used to typing it and changing all of my PowerPoints and slideshows and changing everything over to a new title here. So today I'm kind of talking to you a little bit about thinking outside the career box, especially if you like working with kids and if you like working with animals, things you can do that aren't being a teacher or that aren't being a veterinarian. Because I think when we think of working with kids or animals, those are probably the first two things that come to mind. And both of those things are challenging, hard careers that require a decent amount of schooling, but there's plenty of things you can do not related or not requiring a vet degree or a teaching license to be able to do some of these things. So I want to kind of talk to you about, just different ways to think about what you may want to do. So if you don't know who Allegheny Land Trust is, totally okay. We're a environmental nonprofit based just outside of Pittsburgh in Sewickley, and we protect land to keep it green space forever. So we protect land that is steep hillsides to prevent landslides and erosion. We protect land that is considered a biologically diverse area, so land that is awesome habitat for plants and animals. We conserve land for recreation, so people can hunt and hike and bike and kayak or whatever it may be on the property. We also protect land, especially lately along floodplains to help prevent flooding, because flooding and landslides are two really big resiliency issues in Pittsburgh. So we try to conserve land that's going to help with those two issues. We've been around 27 years now, which is a pretty long time for a nonprofit. We operate mostly in Allegheny County, but we do have properties in Allegheny County, Washington County, and we're working to protect one, I believe, in Butler County. So we're slowly expanding, but the vast majority of our properties are in Allegheny County. In the Mon Valley, the closest one to you all is going to be Dead Man's Hollow, which is actually our largest conservation space. And it's really cool. It's got a forest and a creek, and it actually has some old ruins on it that have a lot of haunted history, which is really fun. During not COVID years, we do haunted history hikes there, which is really interesting and fun, but that one's going to be the closest to you all. It is in Allegheny County, but depending on where you are in the Mon Valley, it's pretty close to you guys. We have 2,800 acres. We just closed on another 60 yesterday, so that number is probably over 2,900 by now. I'm sure I've missed closings on other properties too. In 29 different municipalities, so that's the 29 different neighborhoods around Pittsburgh, essentially. So a little bit about us, a little about me. I love animals and I love kids, and I'm going to show you how I was able to kind of combine those two things in a really fun and kind of unique way. That picture is totally not representative of the number of animals I have. So I have 2 snakes, 2 dogs, 3 lizards, 4 hissing cockroaches, and a vinegaroon, which is like related to a scorpion. So I've always loved animals my whole life. My mom likes to tease me because she used to not be able to leave me alone in the yard because I ate dirt as a child, and she likes to tell me that that's the reason why I became an environmental scientist, was from my extensive dirt eating habit as a young child. So maybe those who eat glue become artists. I don't know, but it's my theory anyway. A little about my background. So I have both a bachelor's and a master's. I got my bachelor's in science first. Science was always my first love. I've always been science-minded and loved the outdoors and loved nature and loved animals. So I got my bachelor in science first. While I was at Muskingum, I did a bunch of internships, which you'll see some photos of. And when I was doing those internships, I was doing them in environmental education. And that's when I realized that, oh yeah, I really enjoy teaching as well. When I was in high school, a lot of people used to tell me you're going to be a teacher, and I just kind of laughed at them because I never really thought of teaching in any other way other than a classroom, and I knew I didn't want to classroom teach. But it wasn't until I got to college and kind of did those internships that I realized I could combine both, which I'll show you guys here in a little bit. I'm certified in a lot of different trainings, and I do presentations around the country. That's kind of the fun, really fun part of my job, is I get to travel around and teach other people why nature and kids is really cool. So I've traveled all over the country doing that. Of course, not this year, but hopefully at some point next year, I'll be able to do that. I think I missed out on trips to California, New Orleans, and Boston this year. So hopefully next year I can at least go somewhere. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. All right, so like I said, this kind of whole talk is going to be about thinking of different ways to take what you love doing and what you're really interested in, and finding kind of a unique path to get you to that career. So like I said, when I was younger, when I was in high school, I student taught dancing. I was a dance instructor for a studio. And that's when people started saying, you should be a teacher, you should be a teacher. And I was like, no, that's quite possibly the last thing I want to do. But here we are. Today, I teach a lot of people. I teach kids and adults. So tons of different things you can think about. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Or if anyone has any specific career interests that they have, please put it in the chat. Or questions about their career, throw it in there. Or if you maybe say, love a different aspect of the environment and you want to know about those careers, please just put it in there. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have about anything really, especially internships and resume writing, cover letter writing, any of that kind of thing. Please feel free to stop me. All right, so I said I am a teacher, but I do not teach in a classroom. So I do have a state teaching certificate. I got my teaching license knowing I did not want to classroom teach. And that was because I had already been teaching environmental education, or non-formal education as it's sometimes called, before I went back and got my master's. So I went back and got my master's in my teaching degree, kind of just as a way to increase my resume skills and make myself more marketable and kind of open up more doors for me professionally by having that master's and having that teaching certificate. But like I said, I don't teach in a classroom. I teach outside. I work for a nonprofit. I still teach most days, although this year it certainly looked a little different. But I specialize in far more than just in classroom teaching. So I write all of the curriculum for all of our programming. That means I write the curriculum for 2-year-olds and for adult programs, for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We just did a Boy Scout merit badge virtually over the weekend, and I wrote all of that. For our community programs and our specialty programs, I spend a lot of time on a program called Science Sprouts. That's our early childhood programming, so that's ages 2 to adult, and that is challenging. It's hard to teach little kids, right? But it's also really fun because we're teaching fun things. We're teaching them how to use magnifying glasses and to kind of look at nature differently and see what's around them. I run professional developments for teachers for Act 48 and PQuas hours, which is just all teachers have to have continuing education credits, and that's what those are. So I teach a lot of teachers every year. I think even with COVID, I've probably seen over 400 teachers this year. On an average year, I may see closer to 1,000 doing professional developments. I purchase and manage all of our supplies. So I'm the only full-time educator at the land trust. So if it comes out of our education department, it's coming from me. So not only am I writing all of the programming and helping teach all the programming, but I'm also managing everything as well. There's a lot of logistics too that you don't always think about. So not only do I purchase supplies, but I manage them, keep track of them, make sure they're working. Especially with COVID, I've been doing a lot of cleaning of supplies, even more so than usual. I wash puppets and I sew puppets and lots of little things. You wear a lot of different hats no matter what job you have, but especially as a teacher and especially as someone who works at a nonprofit, you find yourself wearing tons of different hats. Logistically speaking, I also manage our part-time staff. So we've got 5 part-time staff that help me teach because we do, this year alone, we did over 100 virtual programs, plus everything else we normally do. So I need help sometimes. So I manage all of our part-time folks. I prep all the materials for programs. I write our summer camps and run our summer camp program. And then I get to travel and talk to other people on the importance of nature for little kids too. So this is just one example of how you can be a teacher without actually teaching in a classroom setting. So I love it. It's never the same 2 days in a row, especially this year. So I kind of get to put my hand in a lot of different projects. I write grants, not the funnest part of the job, but I get to secure money to continue on programs and to start new programs and new initiatives. One initiative I've been really, really proud of that we worked on was the Nature Backpack Explorer program. So in Allegheny County, we put together, along with the Allegheny County Library Association, ALT, who I work for, Allegheny County Parks, and also the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, we got together and got a huge grant to do nature backpacks in all of the Allegheny County Association libraries. So over 30 of the libraries now have a backpack full of nature supplies in it that they can take out and learn about birds or learn about bugs, learn about water exploration or trees. And all of those backpacks have guides and guided questions and writing prompts and book resources to check out books. So it's just been an awesome program. And the really exciting part is that I'm currently bringing it to Washington County. So we got a grant from the Community Foundation that's what I was talking to Gina about earlier, spending some grant money. It's for that program. So pretty soon, I've offered it to all of the Washington County libraries. So far, 9 have said yes. So this spring, COVID allowing, you'll be able to check out Nature Explorer backpacks at the Washington County Library. So always tons of different programs and initiatives and ideas and projects happening that always makes the job really fun. That you don't always get that with classroom teaching. So that's something I really enjoy as well. All right, so other ways you can be a teacher without working in a classroom. So here's lots of ways. You can be an educator at a zoo or a museum or a children's museum. This was actually from an environmental education internship I did at the Cincinnati Zoo when I was a junior in college. So during the week, I worked with kids and ran their zoo summer camps, but on the weekends, I really wanted to gain kind of some, I've always loved animals, like I said. I wanted to gain that experience of working with exotic animals. I had worked with some in the past at a different internship, but nothing like elephants, or I got to work with okapis and penguins, which I think you'll see in a minute, and manatees, so lots of different animals, snakes and critters and all sorts of stuff. So working at a zoo, that's actually probably one of my career end goals, is to be the director of education at a zoo or a national park. So even within teaching in a nonprofit, there's movement and flexibility in where you can teach and where you can go with that. This was Mai Tai the elephant. She was probably the friendliest elephant of the 3 they had. You can work in a museum, like an art museum, a natural history museum, a children's museum. So many different places out there, like Meadowcroft has a whole teaching. They teach about Pioneer Days, and they teach about histories. You can do that. So there's tons of different things you can do with teaching, especially non-formally. You can work at a summer camp. So you don't have to work as a counselor at the summer camp. You can be the person who writes the programming, who runs the camp, who recruits the kids. This camp here happens to be part of the Serious Fun Camp Network. Serious Fun, if you haven't heard of it, is a series of camps founded by Paul Newman, the actor. And these camps are specifically designed for kids with health concerns, whether it's life-threatening or essentially terminal illnesses sometimes as well. You do get kids that you may not see the next year, which is really hard. But this camp services kids with all sorts of medical concerns, anything from facial deformities to cancer and heart conditions, blood conditions, all sorts of things. And what's great about these camps is that every single child can do every single activity. So everything there, from the ropes course to the swimming pool, is modified for those kids with the special needs. So some kids with sickle cell can still go swimming in the swimming pool, but when they come out, there's a warmer right outside the pool to keep them warm, because that drastic change in temperature can cause their cells to sickle. So everything is made for all children to be able to participate in. This particular camp was Flying Horse Farms in Ohio. And those are two of our camp counselors I worked with that year. I think I did that during grad school. So that would have had to have been 2010 or 2011. Can't remember, probably 2011, that I worked at this camp. And like I said, lots of opportunities, not only just be a camp counselor, but to work in recruitment or training or program management, program design. Lots of opportunities there. And there's so many summer camps all over the country, whether it's working for Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, working for a place like Flying Horse or Serious Fun or general summer camps. There's a lot of options out there and lots of opportunities within each one of those programs. This one's a little different. You can work within the criminal justice system. So there are teachers out there that specifically work with inmates and those who are imprisoned. So you can combine a love of helping others and teaching with a criminal justice career. So you can work within the criminal justice system to help rehabilitate and help inmates, which is a really interesting take on working with adults. My last example here, I got this idea from my partner who works at Uber. He works in the training department of Uber, helping people learn how to operate self-driving cars. So you could teach people how to operate technology and robots and self-driving systems, which is really, I can't even tell you what you'd be doing, because by the time you're doing it, it doesn't exist now. So essentially, you could be preparing for a career that we don't even know about right now. I can guarantee you he wasn't preparing for this career when he was in school. So who knows? You could be working on, maybe you're working on the Mars lander by the time depending on how old you are, by the time you are graduated and ready to work, you could be working on something that doesn't exist now, which is pretty crazy to think about. Some sort of really interesting form of technology, whether it's robotics or flying cars or artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality. There's so many options there alone that you can work with teaching. Any questions? I'm gonna pull up the chat and wait a second to see if you guys have any questions before I move on to my next little bit of
if anyone does want to unmute themselves as well and ask a question right now while Ashley's not presenting, please feel free to do that. And we will have another session at the end for questions and answers. But if there is something right now, just please feel free to unmute yourself.
Do you foresee any field trips or anything happening throughout the end of the year? Or do you think this whole year is pretty much a waste? Not a waste, but a wash.
We've already been told that we're not allowed to be in the schools.
Yeah.
So our programs are heavily outreach based. So we haven't been in schools at all this year, which is totally mind-boggling to me because I spend a ton of time in the schools. But also, I mean, it depends on the place and it depends on the school. There's less regulations, obviously, with private schools and, you know, Catholic schools and those not governed kind of by the state institutions. But on our end, we've said no. We are limiting, if we have any in-person event at all, they are limited to 10 people who have to be masked at all times. So for us, field trips aren't necessarily happening this year. Some places may still be allowing it, but our end, unless it's a 10 or less group, we just aren't we just aren't offering programs at this point. Our CEO has been very, very cautious, which is good. He would rather us be very, very overly cautious and stay safe than to try to make some money doing some field trips and somebody gets sick. So for us, we're taking a more cautious route. I do know some places probably are offering things, but we're not at this point, especially with cases increasing again. We're just kind of on hold. But we are working to offer virtual programs. So we do have quite a few virtual programs to offer that you can always Zoom into your class or your school or anything like that. So, oh, you're muted.
I don't want to take up a lot of time because I know you still have some part of your presentation, but I'm just wondering, since that question came up from, I know that was the Clareton group, and they have Dead Man's Hollow that's fairly close to them. If they wanted to do something just on their own as a class, is there anything that there's like supplemental material that if they took a visit to Dead Man's Hollow themselves that they could be looking out for, or anything like that?
Most of our supplemental material is in the form of a field trip right now. We haven't made any like just worksheets or scavenger hunts or anything to send out. I will warn you though, if you go to, you're welcome to go to Dead Man's Hollow, by the way, anytime. They did close the Great Allegheny Passage access to that, so you have to go in through the Catfish Pond entrance, which is also totally fine. There's plenty of parking there as well. But just a heads up that you can't access the ruins until probably April or May, which is awful. But because that was the main thoroughfare there. But yeah, you're welcome to go out to Dead Man's Hollow and gosh, just even take a walk. If you need to get out and get some fresh air, take a walk, take a group of kids out there, just wear your masks. Try to stay away from other folks that are there, but you're welcome to go out and explore that and do science on the property anytime. All right, I'm going to move on here. I only have one little bit. So we kind of talked a little bit about teaching options, but now I want to show you some other options on working with animals if you don't want to be a veterinarian. I went through a phase where I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I did some volunteering at an animal shelter and decided that was not for me. That was a little bit on the tougher end. I'm not a super tough person. That's not a career I would want to partake in. I guess I have too much of a soft spot for animals to partake in being a veterinarian, but there's lots of other ways you can work with animals. Here's some. You can work at a zoo. I will say that zookeeper jobs are really hard to come by. So every year, more men are drafted into the NFL than there are open zookeeper positions in the country. So zookeeping jobs, shockingly, are really hard to come by, and that's because there just aren't that many. Lots of people want to work with animals, and once they get in there, they kind of tend to stay there. So be warned that if you want to work at a zoo, it's going to take some interning and some volunteering probably to get your foot in there, but it is really fun once you get there. I think a lot of people assume you can kind of, oops, sorry, that's okay, Ashley. A lot of people assume you get to work really closely with all of the animals. You know, that's not true. Some of the animals, yes, like the penguins aren't going to hurt you, but the larger animals you can't work with. So you kind of have to go into it realistically, knowing that you'll be able to work with some animals closely and some not so much. That picture is really dating itself because there's my digital camera. Cell phones didn't take great pictures then. You can be a game commission officer. So there's game commission positions in every single state. Every single county has game commission officers. Same with fish and boat. So you can work with fish and boat. In Pennsylvania, that's specifically reptiles and amphibians. And they do, I think they do birds. And they also do, obviously, aquatic animals. I could be wrong on the birds. I can't remember if it's the game commission or fish and boat that handles bird issues. But here's some game commission officers in Maine, it looks like, working with bobcats. So you can be game commission officers, do education as well, but they also do things like research with animals and studies and all sorts of different aspects. There's also some criminal justice involved with that because you do some policing as a game commission officer. You can work at a shelter. So you could be a caretaker for the animals at a shelter, whether that means administratively or as an active vet tech or as someone who does the daily logs of the animal's health. Or you can be an animal trainer in an animal shelter, getting the animals ready for their forever homes. Another really interesting one that gets you working with wildlife, especially local wildlife, as working as an animal rescue technician. So there are places like the Humane Animal Rescue, and that's in Pittsburgh. In Washington County, we have Wildlife Works, which is a wildlife rehabilitation center. So they take animals, native wildlife like this opossum here, that have been maybe hit by a car, or maybe they're a baby, they've been abandoned, or they're an injured bird or anything like that. You rehabilitate them and then you release them back into the wild. So that's another option you can do working with animals. So lots of different things here. You do not have to be a veterinarian.